Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Tennis and Bagels podcast. I'm Andre, and it's been a long time since I've recorded something. Been super busy these past couple weeks and whatnot, but I'm here with Vansh, who has pretty much been holding the fort with excellence, let's say this way. So how are you doing, man, today?
Yeah, Andre, it's good to be back with you. Good to hear your voice again as the host. Missed your voice, and I was happy to bring on some guests, try to keep this show rolling, but it's been so busy, with the clay season and
Yeah.
2 week events now and Masters events, and scheduling has been tough for everyone, I think. But I'm glad to be joining the podcast with you here today and talk about some news.
Yeah. Speaking of news, like there's a bunch of things that that happen like maybe this past couple of weeks. Of course, like one of them is the new Madrid and Rome format being switched to 2 weeks, and there was a bunch of debacles in terms of other tournaments and whatnot. Today, as we speak, is a Saturday. But as you've noticed from the title of this podcast, pretty obvious. Definitely the biggest news that have dropped, most likely in the year, maybe in this decade so far, like since the 2020 started. Rafael Nadal is withdrawing from Roland Garros with an injury that has not been healed yet, and it's the first time that he's not playing at the French since 2004, when I think he withdrew that year due to an injury as well. And he went on to win the title 14 times since 2005, and yeah, there's literally no introduction needed for Rafa Nadal when we speak about the French Open. But he did hold a press conference, and he outlined a few of his points that he wanted to discuss with the press and that he wanted to like let his fans know. So Vansh, why don't you fill us in?
Yeah, I think we received word around Wednesday that Nadal will be holding a press conference at his academy in Spain. And at this point, I think a bunch of red flags were ringing because we knew that, okay, he's not going to be holding a press conference to announce that he's playing the French Open. No one ever does that. You would just enter and play, right? But at this point, we figured, okay, it's probably 99% sure that he's not going to play the French. But if he's holding a press conference, that doesn't exactly mean well. So we were definitely a bit anxious and nervous going into it. Like, what is he actually announcing? Is this closer to the end? Obviously hasn't played since Australia and was supposed to enter those clay court events. And we had hoped by Monte Carlo and Barcelona and do his usual Nadal thing of playing all those 5 tournaments. But it just kept getting pushed back. And, we saw videos of him practicing, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they were all over Twitter. And, he seemed to be shutting down a lot of his practices amidst some tears as well. And just, it seemed like it was a race for time to get the French Open rolling. But then he showed up 4 p.m. on Thursday at his academy, 4 p.m. Spain time. I was actually watching this live in the morning before work, and I tuned in, and it was about a 45-minute press conference. Nadal comes and greets a room full of people, his agent sitting in the front row, his coach Carlos Moya in the front row as well. And I think everyone was just holding their breath, waiting to hear what he has to say. And he switched around between Catalonian, which is a different dialect of Spanish, and then normal Spanish, which can be easily translated for most people, and then English. And he sort of answered questions. But I think the main summary is he laid out 3 reasons why he wanted to hold a press conference. The first one, he just said flat out, I'm not going to be able to play Roland Garros this year. And he said a lot of that is mostly down to the injury that he sustained in Australia. It still hasn't healed. Remember, the doctors and physios, medical team, they all said that within 6 to 8 weeks, Rafa should be ready to go. And, he still hasn't really been able to hold the practices the way he'd wanted to. And he said he does not feel himself ready to compete.
Yeah,
So that's the first thing.
it's been almost twice as long as actually more than twice as long than the doctors had first said. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's been a serious thing.
twice as long. Yeah,
Yeah.
12 weeks. So that's a long time. And so I think that one didn't really surprise most people. We were expecting him to pull out of the French. Now the question is, what about the rest of the year? He said after a couple of years, the real situation is I've not been able to enjoy my daily work and competition. And basically what he means is that, I haven't been able to, even though the last couple of years, basically he cited since the pandemic. with that long pause. If you remember, he skipped the U.S. Open that year in 2020 to get himself ready for the French, and came back in October, and he's had issues with his foot since. And then he skipped 6 months at the end of 2021, and he's basically been saying, although I've had a lot of success, last year I won a couple of slams, I've been winning the French Open in 2020, and I've been posting good results, always been in the mix, top 5 players. It still hasn't been easy. The daily work coming back from injuries over and over again. Mentally, I think it's really starting to wear on him. So that was one of my takeaways. Is mentally he feels like he sort of needs some, he needs to figure out where that end is, because mentally as well as emotionally, but obviously physically, like there's all of us have limits. So at that point, he said, that I'm not able to hold practices. I just won't practice anymore for the next 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, however long it might take until he's totally 100%. And then he basically said that he's thinking about next year being his last year on tour. He said probably it'll be my last year on tour. He didn't really say it's an official farewell. He left the door open to basically, basically health dependent. I think he's looking at the Davis Cup potentially in November as maybe a possible return point to the tour. But he basically said as of right now, I don't know, and I think he thinks that 2024 will be his last year. We have previous precedents of this, by the way, because in 1996, Stefan Edberg he formally announced that he's going to be doing an official tour, and basically every single event that you go to at that point, you're being celebrated, and it's like very overwhelming. Like imagine Serena at the U.S. Open, but doing that 15 times a year, or however many tournaments you want to play in, whether you lose in the first round or you get to the final, wherever it may be, all the focus and the attention will be on you, especially if you're a big draw like Nadal is, obviously. So in a way, it sort of maybe puts more pressure. So maybe that was the most surprising thing out of the 3 points that he made, that he's sort of announcing it like it's a farewell. So, but we'll see. Like no one really knows like when he's returned, what situation he'll be in. I think some people were saying that because it's an Olympic year and because the Olympics are being held in July post Wimbledon at the French Open site, many people thought that would be a great place for him to stop. Like, just get the gold medal or, compete for that, and then just stop at basically his home, which is Philippe Chatrier on that court. But he was asked about that actually in English, and he basically just said, I don't know, I'm keeping all my options open.
Yeah.
And I think another thing is he said that he was asked, so why are you giving this another go? Like after all of this, why don't you just stop now, right? And Giovanni Guardian actually tweeted this, but he said that these were Nadal's words. He said, I believe I don't deserve to finish now. I think I have fought enough during all my sporting career so that my end is not today here in a press conference. My ending will be in another way, and I will fight so that my end will be in another way. So this kind of gives you insight into Nadal's philosophy a little bit, how he sort of approached his whole career, and that he always wants to give himself another chance. And I think it also proves that he wouldn't just want to enter the French Open just, to be in it. Like he would only enter if he actually thought he had a very good chance of going deep, and clearly he doesn't think he can. So
yeah, I mean, obviously the most, because in a way I was entertaining maybe the idea that he would be able to play the French Open one last time and retire there. But I think, as you said, like, and as you put it, like, he says, oh, I don't deserve to finish in this way. And I think he didn't want to announce his retirement in that sense either, like as in like I'm just gonna play just to finish, because if he would have played the French and just end his career then and there, it probably would have meant that he was just completely has completely given up on like his body, in a sense, like he just doesn't believe that he can come back and play at a good level. He would have been in a sense like when Andy Roddick retired at the US Open. He knew that was not gonna win, right? His body was busted. He was not gonna do anything. But he decided it was going to play, and he gave his all, like Gilles Simon last year in Paris, Bercy. Like they just kind of want to have like this one last time of fun and whatnot, and that's not what Nadal wants, right? He wants to be able to compete and win, because like for him, a little bit like unlike Federer in that sense, like Nadal is not there just to play tennis. He's there to win at tennis. He enjoys winning. He enjoys competing at the highest level, and I think he'd be pretty frustrated if he couldn't do that. And I think Federer last year, he probably obviously loves competing, but like Federer, I think he just kind of loves to be on a tennis court with his buddies and whatnot. So the Lever Cup was a good idea for him, even though his knee was absent from that tournament.
Just one doubles match.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just like, I'm just gonna like play for whatever and just probably
that makes sense
that.
because that was also that's his event. So I think that would have been in a way, like, because he didn't play the rest of the whole year.
Yeah.
It felt like the ideal place for him to stop with all of his rivals. And it kind of got me thinking, because obviously you go back to that moment, that iconic moment where he and Rafa are holding hands, sitting on the bench, Novak behind them, and you had this whole emotional farewell that Federer got with all of his rivals, and perfect way to go out at an event that he created. And I'm kind of wondering if and when Nadal were to stop, will the rest of his rivals also be present, and will that kind of be a template moving forward for all the big four? Because I think they've made each other's so much better as people and players, and these guys talk about how they spent more time with each other the last 15 years than their own families.
Their own mother,
So like they've been that instrumental in their lives and careers, and they've pushed each other that much that I feel like they all get emotional when they see the other one go, because it's kind of the end of an era. I mean, like the big three itself doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah,
because Federer is gone.
Yeah,
Rafa is. I mean, we're pretty much already getting used to the Nadal one. Is, I mean, until the Australian Open this year, we were basically, he was basically a top 3 player everywhere, along with Djokovic and Alcaraz and all these other top guys. And now, basically since January, we've sort of had to reassess ourselves, because we saw how the way things were going since Wimbledon of last year, when he beat Taylor Fritz, and of course was clearly injured in that match, but finished it off. And in a way, I see a lot of parallels with Federer, in the sense that his return gate kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed, just like the way Rogers was.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when Roger played that match against Sandgren, and he just knew he was going to be toast the next round, and there were a lot of rumors whether he was going to pull out, not being able to play, and it was supposed to be him and Djokovic in the semifinals, and he saved those like 7 match points against Sandgren, and then that was kind of it. Like that was his moment, that was the last deep run we saw from him. And it's kind of like that with Rafa at Wimbledon last year. And I mean, we don't really know, but chances are, like, we've seen the best of Nadal now, and we've seen, like, this is kind of like a close on his career, which is just crazy, because you watch these players play and you see Federer, you see Serena, and you see Nadal, and they're such forces of nature, right? They feel like you can, in the moment, like, that their career is going to end at some point, but you just don't want to like embrace it at that moment, because
and to be fair, like they made sure that, like, and that's one of the points that I wanted to tackle as well, is like they made sure that, like, their career didn't necessarily decline. There was a point in which they were just like too injured to be playing. Isn't like their level never really dropped as much. If you got pick up like players like I don't know, like in Andre Agassi still played pretty well like up until the end of his career, but like say for example Leighton Hewitt or like Marat Safin, obviously you can't compare like a Leighton Hewitt to like a Rafa Nadal. Like it's a totally different ballgame. But like those guys were at the top, and then they started declining, and their level of game was not the same, and other players were able to catch up with them, and players like inside of the top 30. And then like Nadal is a constant, right? So like every time that he's at the US Open, at the French Open, he is a top contender to win, like last year, right? And he completely destroyed Casper Ruud in the final. Like there wasn't a moment where Rafa Nadal was not, the top favorite to win the US Open, aside from 2015, 2016, when he was probably at his worst years in terms of injury and whatnot. But you never really want to count him out. And that's like the presence that Nadal, he just kind of stayed at the top and left at the top, not because his level of play was not good, but because his body just couldn't get there,
Yeah, that's a good point. And it kind of got me thinking also, like, as I was watching or listening to the press conference, I was thinking, like, in a way, I'm like very relieved. Like, obviously, I'm sad that like Nadal's not going to be at Roland Garros, because, I mean, you identify Roland Garros with Nadal. I mean, I think John Wertheim said it's like not having Nadal at Roland Garros is like, Paris without the Eiffel Tower. Like the guy's basically like he's played it every year since 2005. Like he's won it 14 times. Like he has a statue of himself on on the grounds. Like I don't think it gets much bigger than that. Basically, his aura and his presence and that gladiator spirit that he has. Like, as soon as he's entering like Philippe Chatrier, they reel off like all of his titles and wins and matches and records, and it's like they have to catch their breath like 5-6 times as they're reading off that long list. And it's like it's such a feature of like Roland Garros, like to just have Nadal like front and center, and it's like one of the most inevitable things in sports. Like you would go into some of these French Opens literally when you won 8 or 9 or 10, and you'd just be like, oh yeah, Nadal is in the draw. Oh yeah, he's gonna win. Like and it almost didn't matter what he did in the lead ups. Like he just had that kind of feel to it. And so in a way, I'm like very relieved that he made this announcement, because I don't want to see a shell of a man.
Yeah, exactly.
On the court, hobbling and struggling to win against world number 100, because like when I know that even a 80% healthier version of him would probably win that match in straight sets, because like there was also like a pretty big gulf like in his level on clay versus the rest of the field, like a lot of the times. And it's like, and I mean, we've seen Nadal like kind of struggle with his movement the last 2, 3, 4 years, and struggle with injuries. I mean, literally when he won the French Open last year, he was having to numb his foot before every single match, and there were talks of him retiring at the end of the French Open last year as well, and not being able to play Wimbledon. But this just, it's kind of relieving in a way, and it's kind of an opportunity for so many other players now in the field, like who's going to take this chance.
Yeah.
Between Djokovic and all of the other young players under 26.
And Djokovic is probably, in a way, it doesn't look like he has any sort of like apparent injury and whatnot, although he took a lot of time off, but aside from the fact that he couldn't enter the US again, but like, Djokovic must be beating himself a little bit, just because the year Nadal is really not playing the French Open is when Djokovic is not necessarily playing his best anymore. And now we have like players like Rune, and Alcaraz is all more seasoned now. Like Medvedev is playing well on clay, like for crying out, like what is happening? This is probably the least fortunate moment for Djokovic, for Nadal to like withdraw from the French. And that really opens up the door for everybody else. And I think when you mentioned like the numbness on his foot like last year, and when he played Fritz with a broken rib and whatnot, I think like you could see like all the signs of like pretty much every part of like Rafa's body was having an injury of some sort. I think it's
and then when he got his foot sorted, right, like after the French Open, he had that procedure, like that burning of the nerve, like foot ablation, I think is what it was called, right? And then he came into Wimbledon, and we were like, okay, this foot is gonna be fine maybe for the next year.
Yeah.
But then he had so many other injuries after that. Like he had the abdominal injury. He had the, before that he had the hip thing. Then he didn't play anything until Cincinnati, and he loses to George there. And you're thinking, okay, U.S. Open, maybe he can work his way into it. There's no Djokovic. He was probably the favorite going in, with the exception of maybe Alcaraz and Sinner and a few other players. But it's like he was pretty much like he had won 2 of the 3 slams until that point. He hadn't lost at a major all of last year until the U.S. Open, and then but you could see like even during the U.S. Open, like he just wasn't right, and then we later knew that like he re-injured his abdomen a week before, but he just wanted to play because he figured, okay, I'm 70-80%, maybe like I can still work my way, I can win this thing. And then and then he had that whole exhibition tour with Casper Ruud after the World Tour finals, and I was surprised that he played Paris and ATP finals in a way, and maybe a chance to get back to number 1, maybe just play these tournaments one or two last times again, whatever it might be. And I actually felt very optimistic, because when he beat Ruud, like, I pretty much didn't read much into what happened second half of last year, because I was like, okay, like Nadal's not expected to do well. Like he had all these injuries, indoor season. He's never really done very well after the US Open.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's going to be all about the clay season 2023, and I won't write him off until I see him play in Monte Carlo, Barcelona, all that. And then once that like didn't happen, then it became really real. Like, okay, it's been a year now, and he hasn't looked right.
Yeah.
So
I think that it plays as well part of a excuse me, part of the part of the little part where he says that he wasn't really enjoying his game. He wasn't really enjoying playing. I think it does get to a point where you're so injured all the time that
exactly.
you just got like, I can't take this anymore. Like, I mean, and he's got injured this one time, and it kept prolonging itself. And I think that's when he got maybe this realization after all this time off that he's got. Like, he just probably thought to himself, man, this sucks. It's like, I mean, who likes being in pain? I mean, probably Nadal has been in pain for a long time in his career, because as a professional athlete, it's actually pretty common that the athletes have pain here and there. And tennis is no different. It's a very high performance, high demand, like in terms of your physical, aspect of the game. But when he got all this time off and he couldn't pull it off, he wasn't really feeling it. I'd probably consider like some aggressive methods, like the foot thing, like in Roland Garros like last year with the numbing and whatnot. Maybe he explored some of the situations that he probably thought to himself, man, why am I doing this anymore? Like, what's the point? And it probably just got exhausting, like emotionally, mentally, for him to sustain all of this. And I am glad that he's taking the decision to step off, because he needs to like heal properly. I think there's a part of a not to like draw too many parallels, but like Roger said as well, like he just kind of wants to be able to ski with his kids and like live like a proper life after tennis. And I think maybe there is a part of Nadal that like is looking at Roger now and thinking, hey, like there's life after tennis, and I need to be healthy for it too, because he's only, well, in tennis terms, yes, he's old because he's like 37 years old, but like in life, he's just 37 years old. Like, dude, he's got so much left. Like, I mean, and in 2024, if he comes, he probably will come, obviously, like, I think maybe he's gonna come like around 80-90% of like his like full physical form. We might see a lot of like the best of Nadal, because he's gonna be playing with some abandon as well. So yeah, I feel like there's a part of that of me that is just thinking that Nadal is probably like trying to like reevaluate his life as a whole now, and seeing like where tennis, how to fit tennis in it, in his future, I guess.
Yeah, and let's be real, he's given the sport much more than we all could have really hoped. But with how physical his game was, how demanding it was to come back from all those injuries, mentally and physically, and like it's not just like, it's like accepting it in the moment, but then like going through 6 or 8 months sometimes of like strenuous rehab, re-injuries, getting prepared to come back to a low level, working his way up. And it's like, yeah, you just want him to enjoy his post-tennis career, like whatever that may be, like chilling in his yacht on his, island in Mallorca, or like just, like being able to play golf, being able to play tennis, being able to raise his newborn son. And, like, it's not just his sacrifices. Like, he also mentioned that my team has had gone through a lot. My team has had to sacrifice so much for me, and I don't want to keep putting them in danger.
Yeah.
And I think he's just thinking about the bigger picture, his own health, his mental health, his family, his parents, the people at his academy as well. Like he gives so much back to his academy and his students, and it's a whole full-time operation that they have going.
And his academy is like state of the art. Like it's such a
I mean, it's like a proper school and everything where kids go and they learn and study university. Like, it's all very well planned.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's an actual like ATP tournament, like a 250, like, or 500.
I think they hosted a challenger. I want to say in 2019, and Andy Murray was in it. And yeah, I mean, I just think, his body was giving him signs, and now he's listening to his body. But like, if you had told someone in 2006 that he would be still playing right now at this level, and
that he would have won a Grand Slam in 2022, 2 Grand Slams in 2022.
Yeah, and most people were saying, I mean, this guy, the way he's playing, no way he's going past 30. No way he's
Yeah,
Like,
I was one of these people.
like,
Like when I started watching tennis was early enough that like I could get this impression. And then 2009 happened, and that's when we started like putting an end to Nadal's career. And
yeah.
I think 2010 happened, and then 2013 happened again. And at that point, we all started like, okay, now I guess it's a point of like whenever he wants to stop, because it looks like he's gonna be pretty good for a while.
Yeah, and then you just look at how he like adapted his game over the years and how much he like actually technically improved. It's like, he probably tinkered with his serve 5 or 6 different times. It became a reliable weapon for him. Like he was able to win on hard courts, on grass. He was able to like modify his game around some of his best rivals. Also helped him get loads better with Djokovic and Federer and a lot of these other younger players. And it's like, you just see him like grit out these wins that are like against the odds. Like when he played, obviously the one that immediately stands out is when he won the Australian Open last year.
Yeah,
The position that he was in. It's like, he was truly someone who you felt like could come back from whatever impossible situation, and just because his mentality was just that type, that at the same time it's like, you even questioned at points, did he go too far? Like, should he have even continued playing in certain matches and certain tournaments? And I think he always wanted to just leave honorably and have no regrets.
Yeah.
And yeah, there comes a point where you just have no more to give. And I mean, I don't want to write too much of his obituary right now, because it's like he could be back next year and we could be talking about him winning his 15th French Open, and he could be all this could like change. I mean, we live in a sport where in 2019 Andy Murray retired at a press conference and at the Australian Open.
Yeah.
And then he was winning Antwerp 9 months later.
Yeah. And who knows? There is depending on like how Nadal takes this next 6 to 7 months ahead of him. Who knows? Maybe he could even like get back to number one like for another couple of weeks, like Federer did, like back in 2017, when he did it. Like I think it was his last stint as number one. But like he was obviously 35, and now he's older.
The thing is, you just have to be a lot healthy. You just have to get back to like full health, or at least close to it, and be playing a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see like which tournaments he'll actually enter.
Yeah. I mean, he obviously will choose all of the clay tournaments. I don't. If he skips one, maybe
Rome. To win the French.
Yeah.
Prioritize everything to win the French, but be interesting to see if he just plays others just to, say his final goodbye. Or
yeah, I wonder if he intends to try to play Miami just to win it.
Oh yeah, Miami. I think some of those ships have sailed, like Miami and Paris.
Yeah.
ATP finals, but I think usually he's done a good job of sort of prioritizing his body to be maximally as healthy as possible for Roland Garros and those clay tournaments. But when you're seeing that he's not even to be able to be healthy to play on clay, that's a huge thing, because it's like, we saw him pull out of 2016 French Open with a wrist thing, but he still played 2 matches. He still looked good in the lead-ups. We still thought of him as more of a favorite than we did in 2015, let's say. But then, and then you had the stuff in the beginning of his career, sort of ending with an injury and pulling out of you mentioned 2004. Like 2004, he had a foot injury that kept him out, and then the year before that, he was supposed to make his debut, and he had an elbow injury, and that put him out. So it ended up winning it on his debut in 2005.
Yeah,
but it's like, I mean, we're talking about he turned professional in 2001, so we're talking about a now 22, 23 year career. So it's
like more than half of his life at this point. Like, I mean,
there was an incredible stat about him not leaving the top 10, right?
Yeah.
And so since April 2005 to about March 2023, he was a top 10 player. Like, that's more than many of the WTA players.
Yeah,
like, I think coming up like Fruvertova and stuff. Like, that's more than an entire lifetime. He never once shot out the top 10. That's really crazy.
Yeah, for some people, Nadal in the top 10, Nadal at the top of the game is just a fact of life.
Yeah, and so it's going to be crazy when you see the rankings come out after the French Open, and it'll be outside the top 100. Like, and at this point, I think the other thing is, if he wants to play the Olympics, I think there's like some like requirements. Like, you have to play.
There are.
Maybe I think that's why he's talking about Davis Cup, because he knows that he has to like play a couple of matches there. or like at least try to. Like, it's not like the other tournaments where you can just be like, hey, I'm Nadal, I get a wild card. He'll probably get a wild card every single other place that he goes to,
Yeah.
as he should, right? But I don't think Olympics like works that way, like with the committee and the different.
Yeah, I don't exactly know. It depends a bit on the federations and on the Olympic Committee,
Yeah.
and there's a ranking system that goes into that as well.
Yeah. And
but
of course,
yeah,
he's already won the Olympics in singles and doubles, so this would just be a
yeah. And you mentioned the Davis Cup. Yeah, I don't think there's any like too many things for Nadal like left to do in the Olympics. Like if he wants to go for another go for sure, but like there's really not that much of a point. But you mentioned the Davis Cup, and it's been held in Spain for the past like 4 years, 5 years now. And I do wonder, like, because Nadal has loved to play the Davis Cup, unlike most of like not most, but like a bunch of the top players, who will sometimes play it, like Federer, like played occasionally.
Yeah, for him it was just about winning it once. I think for the others, like it was the same.
They
for
just like it, yeah.
Andy and for
even Djokovic who plays quite often, but I do wonder, like, if it's being held in Madrid as well, if it's being held in Spain. Who knows? Even Nadal could even like offer his academy to be the grounds for a Davis Cup tie in Manacor.
Yeah.
That'd be insane. I think it could maybe, if he gets chosen, if he like does that, I think he could probably do that. Like it could be like some sort of like a Roger Federer way of retiring, in a sense, like with his bodies. Like I don't think there will be something more significant to him than retiring.
Like, basically by then he knows that like I can't do 2024. Then
but like I mean in 2024, if he ends up playing Davis Cup again,
2024 at the Davis Cup. Okay, I see what you were saying. Yeah.
I think that could be a possibility, but like I'm not sure. Like I wonder, because as Nadal left it open, there's zero. I feel like for me, I cannot see any evidence or anything leading to where does Nadal want to retire. Does he want to retire at the French Open? I don't even think he wants to retire at the French Open. He loves Spain too much, like in my opinion, to retire at the French Open. He would retire in Barcelona first, then he would
But it'll be interesting to see, like, if he reevaluates his goals, depending on how much he actually is able to play and achieve. Yeah. I think it depends on both the result as well as the feeling and like what his body is telling him. Because like he left it completely open.
Yeah,
like, it's not like an official farewell. Like, this is my last time, but he's like, it probably is. Like, it's So I think.
I mean, he has to come back really, really healthy in 2024 and stay healthy the entire time for him to want to come back in 2025. So
so I mean,
if we're looking, because obviously, as we said, like this is the first time since 2004 that Nadal hasn't played in the French Open. What are your favorite moments of Nadal there since we hit this milestone? And again, we're not trying to retire Nadal ahead of time. We might need to have this conversation again next year, but do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, in terms of favorite, I mean, there's a lot of like very, very impressive matches that he's played, obviously in finals against his big rivals, where he's just, we thought going in we'd get maybe a closer match, and because of his greatness, we just didn't see it because he was so dominant in many of the finals that he played. I think like 7 of the 14, he didn't even drop a set. And some of those were against Federer and Djokovic and Wawrinka team even. I think maybe one of my favorite finals that he's played is the 2019 match against Dominic Thiem. The first 2 sets of that match were insane quality. They were like this was like Thiem at his absolute very best. Unfortunately, he could only really sustain that level for 2 sets because he'd been playing for 4 days in a row, and I think that maybe helped Nadal even more. Not that he needed any help, but Nadal playing on Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, and then Thiem playing every day because of the rain, and then coming off the physical match against Djokovic. I think he just ran out of gas in the last 2 sets, but the first 2 sets of that match, over 2 hours, were some insane shot making, and you have to withstand a lot to even when like the first set, even though it was 6-3 scoreline. But so in terms of finals, I think that's one of the more memorable ones, maybe the ones against Djokovic in 2012, 2014. I think the
2013.
final against 2013. I mean, 2013 is probably the semifinal, which was the de facto final.
Yeah.
And then Novak. That's maybe the match that I think stands out to a lot of people, because obviously Djokovic and Nadal, their rivalry, I mean, they played each other 10 times at Roland Garros alone, or 59 times overall, but the three matches that everyone points to in the best of five are the Australian Open 2012 final, the Roland Garros semifinal in 2013, and then, of course, the Wimbledon semifinal. So I think that's definitely one of the better matches. Obviously, you had all the drama with, like,
The net court.
Rafa, the lead court. Rafa, didn't finish it off in the fourth set. Novak comes all the way back. He plays great to get the break. He puts himself in fantastic position, and then he misses he hits the lead court as he's hitting the smash, and then Rafa comes back around to win it 9-7. But that match certainly had its ups and downs. It was high quality at points for sure. I'm trying to think. I think there's maybe another match that gets lost because it happened so long ago, and it was early in Nadal's career. It wasn't against one of his big rivals. That's the match against Paul-Henri Mathieu.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like almost 5 hours, but it was. I've only seen highlights of it on YouTube because I wasn't a tennis fan in 2006. I was only like 5 years old at the time, but I went back on YouTube during the pandemic and watched it, and it was. Yeah.
Was it like 4-6, 7-5, 7-5, 7-5, right?
Yeah, he ended up losing the first set 7-5, and then the last three sets were 6-4 each.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the opposite. Yeah,
it was like 4 hours, 53 minutes, like so physical.
It's one of the long list of players that I guess Nadal and Federer and Djokovic had those guys as well, but that Nadal destroyed mentally after winning a match like that, because it lifts up Nadal as a champion, but it obviously put the other guy at probably his worst, emotionally, because it when you play a match like this and you still come out losing, you're probably thinking what do I have to do? Will I ever be able to play at this level again? Can I ever win? So it's tough. Yeah.
And I think another one that I really enjoyed last year was the match against Felix.
Yeah, that was a good one too.
Yeah, just because he had to dig so deep to win that. Had to play some insane stuff, particularly in the fifth set, because Felix's serve and his forehand were really, really firing for points in that match, and you had that awkward situation with Tony Nadal as Felix's coach, and obviously that was in Netflix as well, and so the dynamics as well as the pushing away the young rival, and the quality of the match. Definitely the fifth set I thought was the best tennis in the match, but that's definitely one that stands out.
I think I'm gonna say something that a lot of Nadal fans will not enjoy very much, but I think one of the most important moments for Nadal's career at the French Open, and I guess for tennis lore as well, was 2009 when he lost to Robin Soderling. Not necessarily because it was his best match, he was not, but it's just the fact that for 4 years Nadal had not lost a match in Paris. So it was starting to become this sort of urban legend, Nadal just can't lose in Paris. And when he lost for the first time, I think the tennis world just stopped for a moment just to kind of just stay in awe of that, double check the score and see if that was actually happening. Because honestly, it was phenomenal. And at that time he had 4 French Opens and he was going for Borg's 6. It was a matter of time that he got there, but at the time nobody expected him to go as far as 14. So I think that was one of the beginnings, I had a sense of how much Nadal showed how strong he is at the French, to lose a match for the first time and come back and win another 5 times. I think
winning 5 in a row after that, and beat the guy who beat you in the
final.
Final. So that was and then Federer was very thankful that Nadal lost.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Federer fans won't be complaining at all because that was needed, I think, in order for Roger to actually win the French Open at that point. And given how dominant Nadal was, it actually makes me a bit sad for Soderling.
Yeah,
as his career ended the way it did. I think he's one of the most under talked about guys when it comes to what ifs in tennis, just because of how insane that 2009 to 2011 period was for him at the French Open, but also just generally he was the peak of his career, and then he had mononucleosis and all those anxiety attacks. And never stepped on the court again. And the last two matches that he played were bagels and breadsticks against Ferrer and Berdych in his home country in Sweden.
It was a really sad way to go for him, for sure. Especially because the way that he was playing, I guess, as you said, at the French, it almost made you think that he could have had a chance. In a sense, if you kept playing that way. But again, Team came along and it didn't happen for him yet. We'll see if Team ever gets back to his former self. But
it was a bit cathartic, I think, to see that Team got a wild card. Or not a wild card. Team wasn't given a wild card, but he was given entry into the main draw because of Nadal pulling out.
Oh yeah, it does fit really well that this happened to him. It's impressive that they wouldn't give him a wild card, but I guess it makes sense in a way.
I think he got in just based on people pulling out.
Yeah, could you imagine Team having to play qualifying at Roland Garros? That would be pretty sad.
Yeah, if people hadn't pulled out, that would have happened.
He would have
had too. They like to give wildcards to either the champions or French
people. Yeah,
but it's a bit sad. I probably would have given it to him if I was in their position.
Yeah.
But I think also when you see Nadal play and you see some of those qualities, you see the way that people talk about Nadal, the other players. Even they've been getting asked throughout this whole clay season, who's the favorite? Are you the favorite for the French Open? They'd ask Rune, they'd ask Sinner, they'd ask Alcaraz, they'd ask all these top players, and they all just said no, if Nadal is in the draw,
it's Nadal.
If he's playing I think Medvedev was asked, and he's 95% favorite if he didn't even play a single match for 5 months.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think 2020 had taught us this lesson, right? Nadal can come out of nowhere. If he's feeling good, he can win the French Open.
Yeah, and without even dropping a set in October and
completely dismantling Djokovic in the final too. It was it was a statement of tennis. That was not a bigger statement in tennis than that match, I think. In terms of how dominant a player can be. And in terms of that as well, Medvedev actually, in his quote, he mentioned something about how Djokovic has won 10 times the Australian Open, which is pretty big, but there's no doubt that Rafa's 14 Roland Garros are the biggest achievement in tennis. What do you think about that?
No, I think it is. I don't see how that can ever be topped. Because let's say Djokovic does win 15 Australian Opens and something like that, he still have to play for 5-6 years. It's very unlikely, and also it's it's just not the same, because it's you look at he's 112-3. So you look at that, and then you look at he was only pushed to 5 sets 2 or 3 times in total. Isner and Djokovic once, and Felix, and they all lost those 3 matches, and it's all the others have been either 3 sets or 4 sets, and just the whole empire that he's built around that place. Yeah, I mean, for tennis for sure. In all sports, it might even be the best.
Yeah, it's definitely it's definitely an argument that this is a top 3, top 5 records in sports in general. There's
in sports history, and if you were to tell me that it'll never be broken, for most of these things, it's sports evolves. Every single record, at some point gets broken in, or maybe not while we are alive.
Yeah,
you and me, but at some point in the next 100 years, it's kind of expected. As sports evolves and technology gets better, and
I mean,
there's playing longer. It's possible that even these records that we're seeing right now, 22 majors, 23, they seem untouchable, but once you get on a roll, once you're at 10 plus, all of that, it becomes it becomes all possible. And then
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it becomes easier. Like for example, the Grand Slam records in terms of like when you look at the all-time Grand Slam leader, and you look at Margaret Court, which is a whole other thing, but like it's easy to see that it was a lot easier for her, and then now we have guys coming close by like 2 Grand Slams. Serena came close by 1 Grand Slam, and it's no doubt that it is a much tougher achievement what she did now, and to think that maybe in the future it could even be harder to do that. I mean, who knows? And I guess like when you put that point, like maybe players playing longer, I think the only thing that could come close to Nadal's achievement at the French would be a person who is able to play longer than Nadal and has a better winning percentage. That's the only way that I can see.
I think it's the win percentage.
Yeah,
I mean,
because because you can play for like 25 years. You play for like, suppose that in 100 years, you say like players are able to play for like 30 years on tour. If you win 15 Grand Slams and your winning percentage is below Nadal's, I would still pick Nadal over you for like a better.
That's why I think it is the best record in tennis, because it's like even Djokovic, for example, was like insane at the Australian Open. Like he still lost 8 times. It's still like a 90% win percentage. Like, or like Sampras at Wimbledon when he won, like he's like 63-7. It's like 90%.
Yeah.
You know, Federer's around 90% at Wimbledon too. It's like it's not like the same as like 98%, which is like
it's a nearly
ridiculous. Yeah.
This is almost 100% winning.
Yeah. And yeah. But yeah, and then it also just opens it up for the rest of the field. And I don't think there's I don't believe in asterisks personally in sports. Like that's just not how I operate.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, so it's not like whoever wins is going to have an asterisk. Like I just don't believe that at all. It's not like an asterisk a whole tournament just because one man is not.
Especially because if you start asterisking now, you're gonna have to asterisk like literally every single tournament once the big three is retired. It's like, oh, but the big three weren't there. Like it doesn't make sense.
Like injuries are there. Like players pull out all the time. It's like 128 players. Like it's not a given. Plus, it's like even the most records, no one's gonna look back from it like 100 years from now and be like, oh, but in 2022 Nadal wasn't in the draw, or 2023 Nadal wasn't in the draw, therefore I don't know, Carlos Alcaraz, like let's asterisk this. It just doesn't really work like that.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
It's not like you look at the big three and you're like, okay, I think Djokovic 22 slams, okay, I'm gonna asterisk 2021 Wimbledon or whatever because he didn't face XYZ. It's like, it's not really a thing.
And in that regard, I mean, it might sound like really ridiculous, like because in hindsight, of course, like Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer all have like so many titles and they're so great. But at the beginning of their careers, they didn't start off with like 20 Grand Slams. They didn't start off as the greatest of all time. So are you going to asterisk all of their first Grand Slam titles because they didn't face like Sampras and Agassi at their primes? Like you're not going to do that because they beat whoever's in front of them, and they do have some advantage of time. And just like Alcaraz and the new guys have the advantage of being younger, but like it's just sports, right? So like sometimes you even have the advantage of your guy like just rolling over like their ankle and like retiring. In a way,
I think it's going to be interesting to see like how the best of 5 thing plays into it at the French Open, because obviously like Novak would have expected to do better in Rome than he did. I mean, he still made the quarterfinals. He still won 3 matches. Still won a set against Rona. Didn't look great. Wasn't the best level from him.
Yeah.
Got outplayed at certain points. But it's like it's still best of 5. He still won the thing twice. He's still like he can just click into gear, and like the other players haven't proven it yet. Even as great as Alcaraz is, as good as Rona has been, there's still like that unknown of like best of 5. Like, can they do it in a really big match?
Yeah.
Because this guy, like, I mean, we've seen Djokovic come back from 2 sets to love down twice.
Yeah.
In the same tournament to win the thing. So it's...
And it's all about, I think you've mentioned that a few times, that it's all about how you manage the match, right? So, like, we have, like, 5 sets. You potentially have 5 sets to work with. So, like, it
took Djokovic a while to figure, like, out how to do that.
Yeah.
Like, he used to be able to just go week after week after week, and now he just can't do that anymore. Like, he can't just rely on outlasting players from the back of the court.
Yeah.
Like, like he still can when he needs it,
Yeah.
but he's not gonna be able to do that all the time. So I think that's like where the difference is, and it's
Yeah.
where you sort of see him pace himself or like take more losses before slams. And
Yeah, for sure. It's like last year, like he wasn't his best, and well, not last year, but like the year before.
yeah, like 2021, and
Yeah,
like he didn't win Rome, he skipped Madrid, didn't play Monte Carlo, didn't play well in his home country lost.
and notably lost to Nadal in Rome. So
yeah,
but yeah, before we get too carried away, putting favorites for the French Open, we took the time to like have this podcast like a little bit to discuss about Nadal. And now that I think of it, I think it was pretty clear, like what Nadal said, and like I think like the key words that like Nadal is not playing the French Open. That's the most I think important fact for like the near future. But at the end of the day, it's like it's hard to like make anything out of what's gonna happen next because of the way that he left things open for the future. So they could just have to wait and see maybe another hola todos on Twitter, and then we'll know like what's happening. So, but yeah, at this point, it's just we're on the waiting game.
Yeah, we're on the waiting game, and we're just sort of getting used to a new, like calibrating in our heads a new sort of future without these guys. And
yeah,
I think the sport will move on. We'll still have excellent stories. We'll still have great quality matches
for sure. Yeah,
and yeah, so like I mean, Nadal was talking about that too, like in that and his thing, like the French Open will go on without the tournaments and the players make it what a great event it is. It was like the most Nadal statement ever, but basically, but yeah, like I think obviously, like his presence, like his humility, is all the great qualities that he had, like to elevate the sport. I think those will not be forgotten. A lot of the players are inspired by that when they're playing on tour right now. So yeah, it's just kind of taking that forward, and then we just have to wait and see like what happens next. But it's been amazing, like 20 years with like we've just been spoiled. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, I guess. Like for a generation like ours who grew up like watching these guys, at their peaks and like it got them at different stages of their careers and still like beating everybody else. So yeah, I think it's I think you put it perfectly when. And it's not like it's unprecedented that we've seen the Grand Slams without, with only Djokovic, for example, or like without any of the three, like going deeper into the tournament. But the French Open does feel different. Like now that Nadal is just not going to be there at all. Like that definitely has a bigger ring to it than the other ones.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that'll be the first time ever. So we'll see how that looks this year. But
yeah. All right. So
yeah, this was good.
Good to sure.
Sort of give this some more context and the backstory, and then talk a lot about his career. So I think we did a good job, and yeah, hopefully the listeners enjoyed it. I think they will.
Yeah, for sure. If you think that we've forgotten about something or you just want to add to the conversation, like just feel free to tweet at us at Tennis and Bagels. At Vanshvi2K for his personal account. Vansh is a big superstar on Twitter now, so like he may not respond immediately. You can tweet at me at Rolandberg Andre, and
hopefully I'll respond. Yeah.
Yeah.
I try.
And yeah, I'm just joking. Vansh is
as Nadal says, I try my best.
Yeah. Owens is still in Australia, so he couldn't be with us again, but like he is still active, and you can still tweet at him at Tennis Nation. So, Owen, if you're listening to this, I hope we can get all three of us together soon. So,
yeah.
With that being said, have a great one, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.